Very much for staying on the program, The Marketplace. Now, delay in naming new board members and chief executives for some state institutions is virtually bringing activities at these places to a halt. The challenge has been influenced by the Transitions Act, which requires officials of these firms to step aside when a new president is sworn into office. Some of the institutions set to be affected are those that are set up by an act of parliament. Even though some chief executives of these firms have handed over to senior directors, the fact that a lot of transactions need board approvals, most of these institutions are struggling to operate. Business lawyer David Ofosu-Dotte tells Joy Business the development is also affecting the operations of a lot of enterprises.
So when you talk about statutory boards, you are referring to boards which are set up directly by statute. So, and I've heard a few people confuse that with entities like commercial bank and other banks that the state has got shares in. No, those are not statutory organizations. Those are organizations that used to be statutory organizations created by Parliament, but that by virtue of Act 461, that's the Statutory Corporations Conversion to Companies Act, have converted to companies and therefore are registered under the Companies Code. So they are not affected. But statutory boards will refer to boards like Bank of Ghana and all those boards that are set up by the investment committee or the board itself, is taking and cannot take a decision. I find that very surprising because all the banks I know, as I indicated, are set up under the Companies Code and therefore are not statutory boards by my understanding. So in the case of banks, I do not think they should apply at all. But I've given an example of an entity like, let's say, the Road Fund Board is a typical example. So you have to have that distinction between what is a statutory board and what is not a statutory board. So if it's the Road Fund, that's the example I gave, yes, then your answer is valid because the board cannot disburse things. And I have, client contractors who have, are in that situation. But other than statutory boards, banks should be functioning normally.
What about the Bank of Ghana?
Oh, that's a separate animal. And the Bank of Ghana that takes us into a completely different realm. Now, that's a statutory board, by my definition. And if you notice, that is where Okujato's case comes in. So in that case, there is a ruling of the court, and then there is the Transition Act, and there is the Bank of Ghana Act. I don't believe Bank of Ghana board, to the best of my knowledge, has ceased functioning because the point is the entire board runs the Monetary Policy Committee and all those things that enable us function. I think those type of boards, and again, if you look at the fact that we have got an IMF program, which ends in September, I do not think those boards will have challenges functioning at the moment.
A government is set to kickstart the process of renegotiating aspects of the IMF program as it opens formal talks with the fund staff next month. The staff mission visit, which is likely to happen early February as part of the plan to engage government over its concerns with the country's program. But what are the likely areas these will focus on? George Wiafe tells us more.
The visit by the IMF staff mission, which should have come on from next week, is now likely to take place early February. Joy Business understands the mission want to come at a time that they can get a clearer picture on how the previous administration really spent, as well as revenue mobilized and other critical economic data. This is expected to help the team have an informed discussions with the government and look at how to deal with their concerns. Sources say government is likely to push for some targets under the program to be reviewed, especially when it comes to the fiscal deficit, which should have been reviewed from 5% in 2016 to about 4% this year. However, with reports that the deficit will be more than 8%, persons close to this government say it might not be fair for the IMF to still push for the 4% deficit target this year. Another area that discussions would focus on is to take a second look at the program's target of cutting down on expenditure and raising more taxes, especially when this government is planning to cut down on some taxes. For some, the expected review of Ghana's program is critical because of its impact on the new administration's plan of reviewing some taxes and even how much it can spend for this year. Others are also worried about the signals it will send the investors when this administration really goes ahead with this move.
All right, so that was George Riafe's report, and George has joined me in the studio right now. We want to look at the implications of this renegotiation process on the economy as well as to the ordinary Ghanaian. And he's here to tell us more. George, what does it mean to renegotiate this whole program? Does it mean that we will back out?
Not necessarily, and it has several scenarios that we can look at here. And if you could backtrack to 2012 and overruns that we had, issues about credibility on the economy, that's why we went to this fund program.
Sure.
So if government is able to succeed, even to begin this whole process of renegotiation or renegotiating this whole program, the signal that it could send to investors out there is that this government really committed to stabilizing the program or not. Also, don't forget this new administration basically wants to spend X amount of money. They also want to cut down some taxes.
Exactly.
Now, if you go through the IMF program, it's basically aimed at cutting down aggressively on expenditure and raising more taxes. So if the fund says, no, Ghana, it is not possible to renegotiate aspect. If you don't like the program, then cancel the program. It will have implications because then if the IMF says, no, you cannot do ahead or go ahead with renegotiating the program, then it means that MPP's whole plan of trying to cutting down taxes might be difficult for them to go ahead with it because the program is aimed at cutting down on expenditure and raising more taxes. So
what about the option then of backing out? I mean, if
it is
really
also something that is not out of, I mean, they can do it as well. If the country thinks that they have a problem with the program, they can actually make a formal complaint to the fund that, listen, due to X or Y problems, we cannot go ahead with the program. So please excuse us. But again, it comes to the implications of this for the investors who actually bought into our bonds, who actually have some agreement with us because we have this program and how it would restrict government's expenditure. They will start acting, maybe getting out of our bonds, maybe taking decisions that would impact on the economy. But again, the more serious one is the current government and its program. So it means that they could struggle to go ahead with their policy of actually reviewing these taxes and also even how much they can spend. Because this program is saying that, listen, you can't spend too much because of the fact that it has implications on the broader economy. Also, don't forget about a lot of businesses who are out there who've also gone to certain agreement or program because they believe that government has the fund program in place to check its expenditure. If you go out of this program, these businesses would also struggle to get these funds and even go ahead with some partnerships with Howard firms outside.
Now, George, another issue is the fact that we were required under the fund, I mean the program, to do a deficit of, I think, between 5%.
At least 5.5%.
Which couldn't come on. So
which didn't happen.
How would it impact on this renegotiation process?
Again, it would impact a lot because if, for instance, you had achieved that 5.5, then the plan was to reduce it down to 4%. So if you're going to end up doing about 8% or even 9%, breaking it down to 4% might be difficult because under normal programs like these, we are told that if you're trying to reduce the budget deficit, you should look at somewhere around 2% at least a year. So bringing it down to 4% might be difficult for that to happen.
All right, so in your own opinion, what does it hold for this incoming government? What's the way forward?
Really, hands are quite tight. It's either you exit out of the program or the fund should be prepared to accept your views and review aspects of the program. But it looks like they might not have their way in terms of trying to have an overhaul of the program.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you so much.
Insight. All right, so that was George Riafe. Moving on, the Institute of Energy Security, IES, says it expects prices of petroleum products to go up marginally between 1% and 2% as the second pricing window for the month of January opens today. The first pricing window saw the margins shoot up between 9% and 11% in what the IES described as unfair practice on the part of oil marketing companies. Let's now get on the phone lines and speak to the research analyst, the principal research analyst of the Institute of Energy and Security, Richmond Roxon, to actually explain more of this to us. And good afternoon, sir, and welcome to the Marketplace. All right, so I hear we lost Richmond out there. We'll certainly get him back on the line to give us some more insight into this. Let's move on to other stories. And the banking sector is set to witness a boom primarily due to the free market policy the new government intends implementing. That's the verdict of banking consultant and head of the OSETU Center for Executive Education and Research, Nana Utue Champong. The sector has been saddled with challenges such as non-performing loans and high lending rates. Nana Utue Champong, however, believes there will be a turnaround, especially because of the new administration's promise to allow the private sector spearhead economic growth. This, according to him, is only a normal trend across the globe.
whenever you have a government with an economic philosophy of free market, then you notice that the markets see that prospects are good and generally they are receptive. And that's what happened to the U.S. one that you referred to, because Trump comes from the Republican Party, whose political economic philosophy is capitalism. The same way you have that in the UK. When conservatives win, you normally see market sentiments going up. So I think it's something that there's no gainsaying, in referring to that. So once it's a business-friendly government, then it means that the market is appreciative, the market is happy, and they look forward to better prospects in business activity.
All right, so that was Nana Utwe Champon, banking consultant. Let's now go back to our earlier story where the Institute of Energy and Security expects the prices of petroleum products to go up between 1% and 2% in the second pricing window for the month of January. We're joined now by Principal Research Officer at the Institute of Energy Security, Richmond Kilson. Good afternoon, Richmond, and welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
All right, so I'm fine. Now, what are the indices, I beg your pardon, telling us, and why are you expecting between 1% and 2% increase?
Basically, when you use the fundamentals, as we always do, when you use the price of finished product, you also use the price of crude oil, you use our CD dollar rate as well, then you look at our inventory. When you look at currently our inventory has gone up as compared to December. That's the last window. In the last window, our diesel and petrol combined was around just about 200 million liters. As of now, diesel has gone up by about 18%, and petrol has also gone up by about 21%. When you look at our dollar rate, the dollar depreciated by around 3%. Initially, it was about 4.1, 4.2. Now we're looking at 4.3 for the dollar as well. Price of Platts has also gone up by 3%, that's for petrol, and by 1.3%, that's for the diesel as well. When you look at the price of crude oil, it's also gone up by about 1%. Putting all this together, when you are guided by the fundamentals, you expect the price to go up by around 1 to 2%, 1.5 to 2%. But we have a concern as an institute, because in the last pricing window, we're expecting prices to go up by just about 5%. But the OMCs increased prices way above what was expected on the market. I mean, some did 9%, some even did up to 11%.
Yeah, but don't you think that these OMCs also have that right because of the price of petroleum products, crude oil, which went up on the international market, as well as the depreciation of the cedi, that extent, that gap? You don't think they were right to increase
They
the
had
prices?
the right to increase, like we said. We were expecting that the increment would be about around 5%, because we weren't expecting it to be more than that, because when you are guided by the indices that you use, that's what you're supposed to get. Some did about 9%, some did about 11%. And we think that these things are not good. They are killing the policy, the deregulation policy. The deregulation policy is supposed to bring about fair pricing. So when it's time for the consumers to benefit, the prices will come down. When it's time for the OMC to also benefit, the price will go up. But when it's time for the prices to come down and you don't reduce it to the expected margin, but when the time is up to go up and you exceed it, then we think that the OMCs are not being fair to the public. We are for fair prices, and we expect that the regulator will be up and doing, because we don't expect Calibole to be happening again, like it happened some years back in our country's history. So we expect that prices will go up according to what it's supposed to go. So in this window, we don't expect that they will increase. We expect that they will maintain it, because in the previous window, they did way above what they were supposed to do.
All right, now Richmond, so with these margins, how much would you expect the price of petrol per gallon at the pump to cost?
As we speak, the average is about 4.5, 4 cedis, 5 pesos. We expect that the price will be around 4 cedis, 15 pesos maximum.
Okay, and have you gone around some of these stations to check whether they are actually maintaining these prices?
So we've gone around, and like we said, most of the OMCs haven't increased yet. But we plead with them not to increase, because the previous window they did, and they should just be considerate to the consumer as well.
All right, now away from this, Richmond, there's a situation brewing in Nigeria where there's so much scarcity of fuel products vis-a-vis gas, cooking gas as they call it, or LPG, as well as petrol and diesel, now and kerosene as well. Now, would these impact on our situation here in Ghana in any way?
When you look at finished products, we don't think that it will impact because Ghana, we import from different zones, and as we speak, we have enough fuel stored as a country, so we don't expect this to have a direct impact. What we are concerned about is the supply of natural gas, because you know that we depend on natural gas to power our thermal plants, and when Nigeria is having challenges, it will have an effect on us. Because aside Nigeria, that's end gas that we are counting on, and aside Atwabu, we don't have any other alternative. The 10 fields are not ready yet. They'll be ready from March. So if the situation with natural gas continues, it will have an effect on the country. That means our doom situation might come back again.
At what point are we looking at these situations, improving?
So we expect it to improve. I mean, Nigeria has had these challenges for a while. They have security issues, fuel security issues. Some time back, we even had to supply them as a country. So we expect this situation to get better with time, because they will be depending on their neighbors to help them as well.
All right, so by your earlier submission, are you assuring the public that we have enough, stock levels so as to, offset any uncertainty?
Yes, we have enough stock level. For Ghana, we don't expect any this situation to have any direct effect on that, especially when it comes to agro or maybe gasoline or maybe gas oil. We have enough stock. Tema Oil Refinery is working. They took possession of 1 million barrels of oil from 10 fields, and they are refining as well. We have vessels as well, so we don't expect that these will have a direct impact on Ghana.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Richmond Roxon. Richmond Roxon is the Principal Research Officer of the Institute of Energy and Security, IES. And that will be it for this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. Many thanks for your time, and let's meet again same time tomorrow for other interesting developments in the world of business. My name is Emmanuel Apuaji. Good afternoon.